Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing writer Jed Mackay. He is the writer for the new Moonlight series that comes out on July 21st. Jed, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Before I get into your history of writing comics for Marvel, I just want to give a big shout out to Tony White of the Comic Book Talent Agency. Tony was the one who arranged this interview. So Tony, thank you very much for setting this up. Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh no, just say yeah. Tony's runs all my bookings and whatnots for appearances at conventions. So yeah, no, Tony's the best. He's always looking out for me.
No, but again, Tony, thank you very much. Okay, so Jed, before we start the interview, I just want to go over your history. So your first work at Marvel was back in, correct me if I'm wrong, 2010?
Yep.
Okay, and it was X-Men Servant Protect #4. It was a short story called Disco Highway.
Yep.
You did a couple Spider-Punk short stories for Spider-Verse in 2014 and Spider-Get-It in 2018. And then after that, this led to more steady work in the last 3 years with Marvel. You did work on Daughters of the Dragon, the Man Without Fear miniseries, Ghost Panther, a short story in Alpha Flight True North. I read that. That's very good. I love that one.
Oh, thank you.
And then you recently worked on Taskmaster, and Avengers Mech Strike miniseries. Currently, you are working on the fan favorite Black Cat miniseries.
Yep.
You're also doing now correct me if I'm wrong, Infinite Fury, the short story backups in the Marvel Comic annual event, Infinite Destinies. That's currently going on right now. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got Infinite Destinies going on. I wrote 3 of the annuals, Iron Man annual, Black Cat annual, and Avengers annual, as well as the 5-page Fury backups that run in the back of each one with one for area. So yeah, that's kind of all over the place there.
No, but I have to say, because I read the Iron Man annual, and it was a nice surprise to see that little that little short story in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty nice thing. So yeah, and I'm picking up all the annuals just to for this whole event. So yeah.
I hope you enjoy them.
Thank you. And then one last, you have an ongoing series, Magic: The Gathering at Boom Studios. Did I miss anything?
I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. All right. Now, where can listeners follow you on social media?
The best place to follow me is on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's twitter.com/Jed Mackay, JEDMACKAY. I don't really do anything on Instagram. My Facebook just for personal stuff. So yeah, Twitter's your best bet. I generally just talk about stuff I've got coming out, and the occasional joke.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily good ones, but they're there.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to start with your origin story. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Prince Edward Island, Canada. It's the smallest province in Canada. It's an island off the east coast, and yeah, that's where I spent my formative years out in the country in Stanley Bridge.
Oh, okay. And then, what was or were your first comics that you read?
I think the first comics I would have read were, the comics that really, I think, got me reading in the first place when I was a kid. So I can look over here and see my, old battered Tintin books.
Oh yeah.
Used to go through those just over and over again obsessively. That and the the Karl Barks, the Don Rosa, Donald Duck, and Uncle Scrooge stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was very keen on that. So that would be the first comics that I read,
yeah.
And I think largely most of the early reading that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. From there, I kind of moved on up to superhero books, mostly Marvel, some DC stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all stuff from the 70s for the most part, the 60s and 70s. My dad had collected comic books for years during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and so we had these great big containers, just piles of musty old comic books that again my brother and I would just go through over and over again. So I like, I came up in the 90s, but I didn't actually read many 90s comics when I was a kid because you got to buy new comics, whereas we have old comics at home.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty easy choice for my parents to make. So
yeah,
most of my formative comic book stuff came from 70s comics. And then as I got older, I got more interested in other stuff to see what else comics had to offer. I got very interested in looking back to like 80s black and white stuff. It was a real revelation to me to get into the original Ninja Turtle comic books, the Eastman and Laird stuff, the black and white tones. And it was just like totally different because I remember like in the late 80s when the Ninja Turtles cartoon came out, and it was like the biggest thing in the world to anyone my age. And to see what it came from was huge to me, but also to see those black and white comics, there was it didn't have the same kind of polish that mainstream superhero comics did, which I found really interesting and exciting, because it looked more like something that I could do, as opposed to something that was produced by a giant media conglomerate.
Yes.
And from there, I got more interested in what sort of indie books that were coming out through the late 90s into the early 2000s. And and then around then is when I started wanting to make my own comic books.
Okay. And then we're going to touch about that a little. So Drew, the co-host for Comics for Fun and Profit podcast, had this question. What was your first LCS, that you start to buy comics from?
The first local comic shop that I spent my own money at would have been Comic Hunter in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. And they're still there. But I used to go in there, you'd find old comics, they're because again, when you're a kid, you don't have a regular source of income. So you could buy a new comic for $5 or $6 off the stands, or you could buy 10 comics from the quarter bin or the nickel bin,
Yes.
So just be digging up stuff, seeing what looked interesting, what was exciting. And then as well, from that shop, I also got into role playing games and Magic. I was into Magic the Gathering real big in the 90s. Stuff like Warhammer, very traditional gaming stuff, or like tabletop gaming stuff. So that was kind of my favorite place to go to when we come into the city, is just my one-stop nerd bullshit shop. So shout out to Comic Hunter.
Yeah. Okay. So off the cuff question, like you said, you played Magic, back in the 90s.
Yep.
Do you have any of your cards from that period?
I have almost all my cards from that period. So, I obviously I'd look through them to see if there's anything worth any actual money now.
Yes.
I think I've got, I don't have any of the big heavy hitters, because even then I was buying cards from the quarter bin too, right? So, but I've got a set of Force of Will cards that I think are relatively expensive now. But regardless, those 4 cards are now worth more than all the money I ever put into my Magic cards. So that's kind of fun to have. To know it's like, and similar to that, if I hadn't played Magic when I was a kid, I wouldn't be writing the Magic comic books. And now, in a funny way, the money that I spent on Magic when I was a kid turned out in a very real way to be an investment that is now making me money in the future.
Yes, it is. That's pretty cool. It really is.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
But it's great because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm because I'm sure your parents may have gone, oh, you're buying this, don't buy this. Why are you wasting your time on this? And then now it's like 30 years later, you go, hey, mom and dad, look what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, my parents weren't too bad on that. I think they're quite happy that of all the pursuits that I got into, it was just like dumb nerd stuff with my friends. And I was like, well, I'm not getting in trouble this way. It's a lot less of a pain in our ass than him playing hockey or something like that. Having to get up in the morning and go to the rink at 6 a.m. So I think all in all, they're fairly happy with the that direction.
Okay. Now, I'm going to circle back because I know you said that you're that like the now correct me if I'm wrong, like the original Teenage Ninja Mutant Ninja Turtle comics kind of help you started, kind of get you an idea of to start working in comics. How did your what was the first comic that you actually wrote and published, and so forth? Like your origin of how you into comics, basically.
Yeah, so the first comics that I made, like from to completion, was after the point when I realized that I wasn't going to draw my own comics. I really like to draw, but I didn't draw well enough. I didn't draw fast enough, and honestly, I just didn't put the time into it. So I hooked up with my friend Sheldon Bella, who's in Australia.
Yes.
We were on the same message board, and this would have been mid 2000s, so like 2004, 2005, 2006, going around there. And it was a great time for message boards because social media as we know it didn't exist, and instead you had these like really dedicated communities to a certain goal, which was in this case making comics. A bunch of young people with particular ideas or particular styles or wanted to experiment and try stuff. So yeah, I hooked up with Sheldon. We started making some comics together for fun. They haven't aged well, at least in the writing end of it. The art still looks great, but it was enough to get Sheldon work eventually with Marvel.
Yes.
And that's how I got my first paid job was with Marvel. And that Sheldon brought me in on that job. They said they hired me to do this 8-page story, an X-Men Serve and Protect. It's got to be an X-Men character joined up with a not X-Men character, but I don't know any of these characters. So why don't you come in and write it, and then we'll both make a paycheck off it.
Yes.
And that was my first paid work.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to add, how exciting was it to see your name literally on a Marvel comic book? How exciting was that?
It was very exciting. Equally exciting was seeing my name on a Marvel paycheck.
Yes.
So, but yeah, no, it was pretty cool. Like, where I'm from rural maritime Canada. And when I was a kid, you didn't think that people from rural maritime Canada made stuff in big media properties, It just seemed like something only Americans did. Only people who lived in New York would do something like that. And to see my own name on a comic book, it was hugely exciting. It was only 8 pages, it was only one issue of an anthology, a 4-issue anthology mini, but still it was a real treat, it was a real highlight.
Yes.
And I was like, I want to do this again. But yeah, so like I said, to see my name, just some dummy out in the East Coast of Canada, see my name on a published book like that, it was really exciting. And I just wanted to do it again.
Yes.
And get my name on more books if possible.
Yes. And then like I mentioned, it was a long period before Marvel got back to you to do the Spider-Punk short story in Spider-Verse in 2014, and then again it took a while again before you did another story with them in 2018 for Spider-Geddon, and then after that you just been writing from them ever since, correct?
Yeah, like it's like when I started working steadily, people were like, "Oh, you're a real overnight success." I'm like, "Well, kind of." An overnight success is 10 years in the making. And like that's the thing. I did my first job. I was like, "Okay, great. Let's do it again." And then like nothing for 4 years, just because it's just what happens. You don't have you don't have a name, you don't have stuff or like a real portfolio of any sort to fall back on, then you're just not going to be the first person an editor thinks of when they have work they want done.
Yes.
But then 2014 rolled around. Nick was looking for someone to do the Spider-Punk story, and he got back to Sheldon and I and said, it's been a long time, but if you guys are interested, we've got another 8 pages for you. We got this Spider-Punk character who's appearing, in the sidelines of Spider-Verse,
Mhm.
and we want to know more about him. We don't know who he is under the mask. We don't know what his world is like. We don't know anything about him. So give him a name, give him a secret identity, give him a world. And that's what we did.
Mhm.
And it was really exciting. People seemed to be pretty keen on it. And we're like, okay, this is it. The Dazzler story didn't get us either of us careers at Marvel. But, it's a Dazzler story. That's fine.
Yeah.
But like people are getting into the Spider-Punk character, and this is going to be it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing for another 4 years.
Uh-huh.
And so then in 2018, Nick got back to us again and was like, "Listen, I'm putting together Spider-Punk, a full issue for Edge of Spider-Geddon, and full 20-page issue this time." And it's like, "Do you guys want to do it?" Sheldon was busy working, doing storyboards and animation, so he didn't have the time to crank out 20 pages. But I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll do that."
Yeah.
So I think I turned that around. It was very, just like feverishly, pages.
Yeah.
And so when that came out, I said to Nick, I'm like, it's been a lot of fun. I really love working on this. If you've got anything else you think I'd be a good fit for, I'd appreciate it if you'd give me a shout.
So basically, after the Spider-Punk and Edge of Spider-Verse Spider-Geddon, you talked to Nick, and then he offered you Daughters of the Dragon, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was a chance to have it. They had this Daughters of the Dragon book going, but I guess whoever they had before had dropped out or whatever reason it wasn't going to work, and they needed someone to fill in like as soon as possible. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Daughters of the Dragon were the characters we used in our first Dazzler story. The characters I like, and I was real psyched to go not from one issue to here's a full 6-issue miniseries. And then that was kind of it. Like Daughters of the Dragon, it didn't sell huge because it's digital first. It's not going to have the same outreach as something in a comic shop. But it was something that a lot of editors liked. People saw something in it that was exciting, entertaining for them, and that's where basically the rest of my work came from. Went from there to Man Without Fear, Ghost Panther, and then finally Black Cat.
Yes.
Because Nick again gave me a call. He's like, "Listen, I've got something for you. I really love Daughters of the Dragon, but obviously we can't do another Daughters of the Dragon series because it's just wouldn't sell right now.
Yeah.
But it's because we're doing Black Cat. We're spinning it off out of Amazing Spider-Man. Excuse me. And I basically want the same kind of thing that you did with Daughters of the Dragon, do with Black Cat. Just high energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of action, jokes and stuff like that. And that that opened a lot of doors for me. Like Black Cat was pretty well received.
Yes.
A lot of people liked it.
Yes.
And that's kind of my biggest deal so far. And then from there, other stuff has kind of tumbled out of it.
So okay, then now we're going to go into your new series that you're going to be working on, Moonlight. So I'm sorry. So I'm just going to explain to listeners, because in case either listeners or even new comic book fans that are tuning into this episode, I just want to give them a little bit of a background, his origin and so forth like that, and who the creative team were. Because Moonlight, now correct me if I'm wrong, Moonlight is like one of those B or C-list characters, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's been around for a long time, but he's always kind of blipping in and out of publication.
Yes. So okay. So and like I said, you can correct me if I'm wrong in any of this part. So Moonlight was created by, I'm going to try to pronounce the writer's name correctly, Doug Mensch, and artist Don Perlin. Now, Moonlight's first appearance was in Werewolf by Night number 32. That was back in August of 1975. The facsimile edition is currently out in stores today. It was released on, the facsimile edition was released today on July 7th. Now, the origin, how Marvel puts their little origin blurbs. This is from Moonlight number 1 in 2016. Mercenary Mark Spector died in Egypt under a statue of the moon god Khonshu. In the shadow of the ancient deity, Mark returned to life and took on Khonshu's aspect to fight crime for his own redemption. He went completely insane and disappeared for a time, but returned to protect those who travel by night. Um, and again, for listeners that are are looking for a new series to jump on, or if you're a new comic book reader, check out this new series, Moonlight. That's going to be out in stores on July 21st. Um, so my question to you, Jed, is, have you read any of the 1980 Moonlight series?
Yeah, I read. I don't know if I read it all, but I've certainly read most of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was when you're asked to pitch something, you kind of have to get familiar with something really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So you read as much as you can, and then you kind of do a skim for the rest, just to get your grounding, your bases covered, and then you go back and fill in the blanks and your the stuff that you missed or whatever. So yeah, I've read I think almost all of Moon Knight at this point.
Wow.
So kind of went back and because you're always digging, you're always looking for something that's interesting to bring up, looking for something that is worthwhile to resurrect for a modern story.
Yes.
Something that it's something I find very interesting as far as working in a shared universe, because there's so much history there and there's so much to dig into, while also at the same time not wanting to be bound by it.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, because I sent you the questions, and I'm going to ask, did you ever read this 2-part Moonlight story that was in the Rampaging Hulk magazines back in the 80s?
Yeah, that was the one that went into Mark's background as a CIA agent, right? It was like the Brainiac helmet guy.
I'm not sure, because
his brother, I believe.
Yes, his brother. Well, I know he had to do with his brother, and wasn't it his brother turned out to be a serial killer?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those. I feel like there's a couple black and white Moon Knight stories in those magazines.
Yeah.
Because there's one where I'm getting them mixed up now. Like I said, I read a lot of them in very quick succession, so the details start to blend together a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's the one where I believe he and his brother were both working with the CIA, and then he betrayed him. But yeah, I have read them, but again, I think the details are starting to blur together a little bit.
Yeah, but because I'm sorry, the only reason why I brought that up is because I've read some Moon Knights here and issues here and there, but that Rampaging Hulk magazine. I remember reading that, and I know those magazines back then were a little bit for more mature audiences, and like for me as a 12, 13-year-old kid reading, this, because back then comics were pretty much tame with their violence. But for me to read that one Moon Knight story where it's like, oh my God, how this guy's killing, how this guy's, killing people.
Because he was like an axe murderer.
Yeah.
Because he had like a goblin mask kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
And I remember where you're talking. And they did a showdown in Central Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. I was getting that confused with another black and white story. But yeah, those black and white magazines were really exciting. My favorite was Savage Tales, I think 2 and 3. It had the 2-part Barry Windsor Smith Conan Red Nails story, and it was spectacular. It's just like, because I loved the Barry Windsor Smith Conan stuff. It's like came up on it, but that Savage Tales stuff, the Red Nails story was it was so completely over the top with its violence, and but everything was so like perfectly and beautifully rendered in like this really stark black and white.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff.
Oh man, I gotta track that down. So thank you for that recommendation. But now I gotta track that down. Okay, so I'm gonna ask. So, what drew you to the Moon Knight character?
I like Moon Knight. He's a character that I think I was first introduced to from the Marvel superheroes trading cards. And I didn't know anything about him, as a lot of the characters that for me that was my introduction to a lot of characters. Just here's your trading card, here's their name, here's the little blurb about who they are.
Yes.
Here's their power stats or whatever. And he's someone who's instantly striking. He's got a cool name. He's got a cool look. The white costume with the hood.
Yeah.
the big cape, and so it's always kind of stuck with me. Like, oh, it's he seems really cool. The first time I remember getting into the character was probably the 2014 Moon Knight series,
Okay.
which I was very taken with when it came out, because it was it was very street level, but also very weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's for me. I think that's where I like Moon Knight the best, where he's on the streets, but he's not just beating up muggers or dealing with the gangs. Instead, he's dealing with weird things that him being a weird guy
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
perfectly suited to deal with. And I think that's a particular niche in the Marvel universe that suits him very well,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of what we're focusing on in our upcoming series.
Mm-hmm.
Street level but strange.
Yes. So, and then let's see. I'm gonna jump ahead a bit, and I'll probably come back to uh, um, some questions. Come back around some questions.
Sure.
So, okay. So, so now in your Moonlight series, is the Midnight Mission, is it new to the Marvel universe?
Yeah, that was something I created when I was coming up with what I wanted to do for Moon Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I was emailed in I think October. Tom Brevoort was looking to put together the Moon Knight series.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really know what he wanted it to look like,
Yes.
so he was asking around to a bunch of writers saying, "What's your take on Moon Knight? What would you like to do with the character?" And something that kind of struck me with the character of Moon Knight, he has the title of the Station of the Fist of Khonshu.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, he's the High Priest of Khonshu. And this idea of Moon Knight as a priest, I found very interesting because it's so contradictory in so many ways. In the wake of the Age of Khonshu,
Yes.
Moon Knight and Khonshu are not on great terms. Similarly, Mark is of Jewish heritage.
Yeah.
And that's not something that goes really well with being the priest of an Egyptian god.
Yes.
And thinking about stuff like that, I thought it'd be really interesting to basically give him a home base. The Midnight Mission. It's like a mission you'd find in any city, except this is where his base is, where he goes to beat up strange things at night to protect people. And it's something that makes him accessible to people. People know where to find him, and people can come to ask him for help. And it makes him, it gives him a certain level of vulnerability because he's basically claiming territory and saying, "This is my territory. These are my people that I look after. Yeah. If you mess around in my territory, things are going to go very poorly for you." As opposed to being a mysterious avenger of the night, where no one knows where to find him. He just kind of has to turn up. Here he's putting himself on the line. He's putting himself out there. And I thought that was an interesting kind of new direction for him. Yeah. And similarly, it lends itself well to an almost procedural way of storytelling, where we're starting off, I'm trying to make each issue its own contained story.
Yes.
It all feeds into the larger story as it goes on. But if you buy an issue of Moon Knight, you get a full story. You see what happens from beginning to end.
Yes.
As well as obviously building up as we go on. And I think that the Midnight Mission setting is conducive to that. New issue, new person's got a problem. New issue, a new difficulty has risen in Moon Knight's territory that he's tagged with his crescent moon spray paint.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's see. Will you be introducing any and no spoilers, like will you be introducing any new friends or characters to this series?
Yeah, when I started working on it, there was some kind of editorial guidance where they say, here's some things that we want to look at in the story. Here's some things we want to stay away from.
Yes.
And we wanted to not necessarily go back to the same Wild Moon Knight supporting cast. He's had a pretty regular supporting cast over the years.
Yes.
But time has kind of taken its toll on those characters, and we wanted to start fresh. You know, maybe build up a little more of his corner of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and look at what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, you know, new characters coming in to help him out, or to, you know, to be a part of his life.
Mm-hmm.
We have old friends from way back who maybe we wouldn't necessarily expect are going to be turning up, one of which I think will be revealed this month when this list's come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got new enemies for him to deal with, and, you know, new to him enemies, where, you know, villains or, you know, baddies who are already established in the Marvel universe, but who are not Moon Knight characters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of shuffling the puzzle pieces around and seeing what we can build with them.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Going back to the Midnight Mission. Now, thing is, I saw a preview page of, and correct me if I'm, you had the character of, it was Mr. Knight, correct? In his suit, and he's on the phone. That looked awesome. It was just a nice dark contrast of the colors.
Yeah, Alessandro and Rochelle have been doing great work, just like making this look like a big deal. You know, and that's kind of the thing that we're leaning into is, you know, at the Midnight Mission, he's Mr. Knight, and he's out in the streets busting heads. He's Moon Knight.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of building that, you know, dichotomy of identity, and then trying to figure out where Mark Spector fits in between these two sort of personas that he puts on.
Yes. Okay. And then how did you and now I'm going to try to pronounce your artist name, Alessandro. How did you guys team up?
It just all came from editorial. Tom Brevoort was putting together the team, so he got me in to write it. Then Alessandro was, you know, he's quite new, so it's you know, a good fresh new find. Excuse me. He had some, you know, pages in with Ricky Purdon, the talent management guru over at Marvel, and he basically, Tom saw his work, said let's put him in, let's give him a try, and that's where it all came.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm gonna now, did you guys make a real conscious effort to, you know, not to let Oscar Isaac, because we know Oscar Isaac is going to play Moon Knight in the Disney Plus series. Did you guys make a real effort, you know, not to let Oscar Isaac influence how Mark Spector should look or sound?
I mean, it's not really been an issue. You know, we haven't seen anything of Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight at this point, so I basically have nothing to. I would have nothing to draw upon. So it's not been a difficulty at this point.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. All right. And then now I know that you mentioned that, you know, we probably will see, you know, some characters or even some villains that's not you know, that's, you know, not part of you know, Moon Knight's rogue gallery pop in to, you know, fight Moon Knight. But I just wanted to ask, you know, will we see Black Cat or Taskmaster pop up in the series?
I mean, it's a possibility. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I love putting both, you know, Black Cat and Taskmaster wherever I can. So it would not surprise me if in the future they did turn up. I have no plans at current, but we'll see how it shakes out down the line. Okay.
And then now I saw some of the preview pages of Moon Knight. Now you've included some vampires. Is that correct?
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, if you want street level weirdness, vampires are always a good shorthand for basically any evil that you can think of. You know, these vampires are like a real sort of shitty multi-level marketing self-improvement cult. So that's what you know, just they don't need a lot of introduction. So they're a great way to start.
Yeah. I have to say this because when I read Black Cat #1 and I saw the short story that you wrote, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it was a younger Black Fox, the character, and he was playing cards against Dracula, correct?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I love that.
Yeah, that was a period of time where I was very excited by the fact that Dracula was a Marvel character. I'd forgotten that for some reason for a while. Yeah. And I think I was trying to put Dracula on a whole bunch of stuff at that point in time, as well Ulysses Bloodstone, who
Yes.
was a Mueller obsession for a while. So I got Dracula and Ulysses Stone in that Mike Dowling drew, which was it was a bit of a personal triumph.
But I have to say, couple things is at the end of Black Cat number. Sorry, I know I'm going off the cuff here, but
Yeah.
it was so cool to see the return of the Black Fox, because I remembered him fondly from Tom DeFalco and Ron Friend's run in the Spider-Man comics. It was so cool to see him back. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a happy instance of collaboration, actually. When I was first putting this pitch together for the book,
Mm-hmm.
I'd come up with just like I made up a character who was to be Felicia's mentor, and Nick Lowe, the editor, and Nick Spencer on Amazing Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
both kind of put their heads together, like, well, why don't you use the Black Fox instead? That seems to be a much better choice. I was like, I have no idea who the Black Fox is, but I looked it up. I'm like, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now, I don't know how that role could have been taken by anybody else but the Black Fox.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real happy bit of collaboration there. It's a good note to take.
That's pretty cool. It really works. So, okay. I'm slowly wrapping things up. Do you have any insights on why fans love Moon Knight? That has been around for 46 years, and literally you've seen it. Because you've done all the back issue reading. Like has I don't even know how many volumes.
Yeah. Jeepers, what volume is this?
I know.
No, I don't know. I'd have to look to see what it's listed as. I haven't even thought about that. But yeah, it's Moonlight. I don't know, like volume 6, volume 7.
I think it is. Yeah. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think people like Moon Knight because, I mean, he's on one hand he's something very familiar. He's a caped street level vigilante of the night.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, he's also a real mess.
Mm-hmm.
Like and like I'm not even talking about his dissociative identity disorder, which like that's often what people go to and say, oh, well, Moon Knight is mentally ill and he's wild and wacky. But having done a certain amount of reading on him, 99% of his problems in life are not based on his mental illness. They're based on his decisions, his addiction to violence, his his tumultuous relationship with Khonshu.
Mm-hmm.
And it always interests me that he's just a guy who's such an outsider and he's so alienated.
Mm-hmm.
He's a superhero that none of the other superheroes like,
mm-hmm.
Which is kind of the opposite of how I was playing Black Cat, where Black Cat is a criminal, but everybody likes her.
Yes.
Moon Knight is a hero, but nobody likes him. Everyone thinks that he's, erratic or difficult to be around.
Yes.
And that idea of this superhero, this caped vigilante, who's an outsider even to other superheroes, I think that just is something that a lot of people like and a lot of people pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that can provide a lot of pathos to this character, because I mean he's built up his life and burned it down so many times at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If you go through his whole history, he's always trying something new, and inevitably it goes bad somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of one of the tension points of where we're starting here, is because obviously with this new number 1, he's trying something new. He's trying to rebuild, trying to build a life, trying to figure out who is Mark Spector. What does it mean to be the Fist of Khonshu without the backing of Khonshu?
Mm-hmm.
Why would he still call himself that? Why is he still calling himself Moon Knight? And we've seen him try to build his life up from scratch many times. Is this time going to be different?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we're all in Mark's corner, just pulling for him, but he's also his own worst enemy a lot of times.
That is a very pretty in-depth insight about Moon Knight. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I also think he's a character that gives readers something they don't necessarily get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like to use this kind of shorthand, like, oh, Moon Knight's just Batman, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like, yes, they have capes and they run around at night and they throw things at people.
Mm-hmm.
Moon Knight is also quite rich from time to time, depending how his fortunes are going.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you couldn't they're wildly different. You know, Bruce Wayne was a millionaire playboy driven by vengeance. Moon Knight was a war criminal trying to make up for his past. Like it's, yeah, I don't know. That's the Moon Knight is Batman thing always irks me,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean it's easy and it's lazy, so I guess I understand why people like it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, couple final questions, and then I'll start asking some fun questions and wrap it up.
Sure.
Okay, so Drew submitted this. Where do you see the comic book industry going, for the remainder of 2021? Because I know last year during the pandemic, there were shutdowns, cutbacks, and so forth.
I mean, I hope we have a healthy comic industry. I think people are going back to stores.
Yes.
I'm trying to see shows and conventions coming back again. I think, comics, I think, are being as healthy now as they've ever been. But what I would like to see as we go forward is, trying to reach new readers, trying to reach people who aren't typically served by what comic books are, what they think comic books are. Because I'm not just talking about the Marvel DC ecosystem, but I just think there's so much room for comic books to be a method of storytelling that gradually people are getting over any sort of preconceptions, or I don't like using the term stigma because it seems a bit silly, but it's just that whatever you want, there's a comic book for you, whatever form of comic book that might look like. I'm not, maybe it's a superhero book, maybe it's an indie book, maybe it's original graphic novels, maybe it's manga, maybe it's European stuff. Like there's something out there for everyone. No matter how wildly different your tastes are, I think that you could be well served with comics, and I'd like to see that awareness grow larger. I'd like to see people who maybe felt they don't have a place in comics, either on the creator side or the reader side. I'd like that to change.
Yeah.
I think that we should have so many more types of viewpoints, so many more types of experiences put out there by creators, creators of different experiences, different backgrounds, what have you. And because I think that's the only way you're really going to get that audience.
Yes.
I mean, I can tell stories however I want, but ultimately my point of view is still just going to be, some white dude, where I would like to see those voices expanded to, people of many different experiences, racial backgrounds, gender identities, sexualities, what have you. So hopefully that's what we see moving forward.
Yeah, no, yes. Yeah. And I agree with that because like you said, comics, for new readers it should be for anyone and actually everyone. Yeah.
And I mean, like, obviously I'm not really interested in, neo-Nazis being well served by comic books, like, screw that. But where I'm coming from here.
Yes. No, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, literally, I mean, who knows from now, like, an Asian, and I'm just kind of going on the cuff here, like,
sure, yeah,
like an Asian, either a boy, girl, or whatever gender identity, when they read either like a Asian Hulk, that came out, I think, 5 years ago, in 10 years could be, a comic book writer because they were influenced by that.
Yeah, exactly. And because I mean, that's the thing, like I can, when I introduce new characters, try to introduce new characters that maybe people who are not commonly represented in comic books can identify with.
Yes.
But ultimately my my creation of these characters or my use of these characters isn't ever going to be 100% authentic because it's just not a viewpoint or it's not an experience that I share.
Yes.
So, as a writer, we try to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, but ultimately the best work is done from a place of, authentic experience.
Yes. And I'm going to say, because I'm going to point this out, is that the reason why I love Alpha Flight True North, your short story, is because, now correct me if I'm wrong, you grew up on Prince Edward Island, right?
Yep.
Because I didn't know that, because when Puck, I think it was Puck that said, oh yeah, well, here we are at PEI Beach or something. I'm going, what's P?
Yeah.
Then it took me a while to go, oh, it's Prince Edward Island.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's a very sort of, frivolous sort of representation. But again, like it's something that I was excited to do. I'm like, I'm going to set an Alpha Flight story where I came from.
Yeah.
My specifically, in Cavendish Beach, around where I used to live, where I used to work. And, PEI hadn't been an issue of Marvel Comics for, I think, 20 some years. I think Atuma invaded it once in Adventures or Namor. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was fun. It was fun to go back to a place where I'm from and, talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like, I would like other people to have that chance.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to continue. I'm going to start wrapping this up. Can you talk about any of your new projects? No spoilers or, whatever you can talk about. Any new projects coming up, any, I know you have another miniseries coming out from Marvel. Any other works from the other publishers or anything?
Currently, all my work is Marvel except for the Magic the Gathering series. I'm working on it. Boom. Magic is, going along full tilt. We had issue 4 come out today. Yes, issue 4. So we're next issue. I'm looking forward to coming out. I think there's a pretty neat revelation that hopefully people will enjoy. Other than that, Black Cat's still coming out. Next issue's out the 28th.
Okay.
Obviously, Moonlight 21st, and coming down the pipe, we have the death of Doctor Strange.
Yes.
So we're killing Doctor Strange.
All right, I'm gonna go to fun questions. What was your best convention moment or moments? Like whether it's meeting a creator or a media guest, or as a fan, or if you're a writer at a convention.
It's funny because I've never actually been to a convention until I started working professionally in comics.
Okay.
It was just never something I really got around to. There's a couple of conventions. There's HalCon here in Halifax. There's Dartmouth Comic Arts Festival just across the bridge. But I just never really got around to it. So I'd say I'm trying to think of my best con memory would be, or like, my biggest meeting would be. I don't know. I did talk to Art Adams when I was at New York Comic Con the first time. He had just drawn a section of the first issue of Spider-Verse that I wrote. I think it was like 3 pages, 4 pages, but he had done such a great little sight joke in the background that I was so taken with that I hadn't written. He just made it up.
Yeah.
Because basically, Miles, he goes through a portal, he lands in this like monster version of Manhattan. And I wrote that, he tries to swing away, and then the Spider-Man of this dimension is like a monster. He's got like 4 arms and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, he had drawn the Peter Parker version of Spider-Monster running away in the background with his like spider sense going off. So like running off to change his costume. I was like, man, that was so good. Like, it was such a good joke that I really wish I thought of it. He's like, oh yeah, you can have that. You can say you made that up. I'm like, I won't, but thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Have you and your wife been to Hawaii?
No, never. I've crossed the Pacific a few times. I used to live and work in Korea for a couple of years. Lived and worked in China for a year, but I've never stopped. It's from one continent to the other. I would love to visit sometime. I mean, I grew up watching tapes of Magnum PI, so it's got a special spot in my heart, but we haven't made it there yet.
Okay. Again, where can people follow you on social on your Twitter? I'm sorry.
Yep, Twitter is the best. You're welcome to follow me on Instagram. I don't post anything. I just wanted to make sure I locked down the name in case I used it later.
Yeah. Okay. And then any last words to our listeners?
None really. I hope if you're not familiar with the books that I've been working on, I hope maybe this will convince you to give them a try. I think you'll like them, but I'm also a bit of a biased source. But yeah, thanks for listening, and thanks for having me on the show.
No, Jed, thank you very much. So, again, Jed, thank you very much for your time, and giving me the opportunity to interview you. Thank you very much.
No problem. Always happy to talk about comic books.
And then just a reminder, listeners, Moonlight #1 comes out on July 21st. If you get a chance, please put this on your pull list. Also, too, I want to give a big mahalo again to Tony for setting up this interview. So again, Tony, thank you very much. And I want to thank Drew, my co-host, for Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together and for all your hard work behind the scenes. And please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.